Leora opened her eyes to the harsh light of the twin suns above. The air was thin, dry and bitter, carrying a smell of dust and metal. She pulled herself up from the cracked rocky ground, her stomach twisting with hunger. Once again, she had gone the night without enough food. Her limbs felt weak, her bones ached, but she could not rest. The aliens would not allow it. Around her, the alien settlement was alive with noise. The creatures were tall, lean, and covered in iridescent scales. Their faces had sharp angles and eyes that glittered like gemstones. They laughed loudly, a sound that cut into her heart every time she heard it. They were cruel, and they took pleasure in the suffering of anyone weaker than them. And right now, that weaker being was her. "Look at her again." One of the aliens, a young male with blue scales, shouted. His voice echoed through the settlement. "She cannot even lift that rock, pathetic." The group around him laughed harder. Leora's cheeks burned, but she did not respond. She had learned long ago that showing anger or fear only made things worse. She looked down at the small, battered basket she carried, hoping for even the tiniest scrap of food. Sometimes the scraps she found in the settlement's waste piles were barely enough to keep her alive. She remembered the day she arrived on this planet. A storm had wrecked her small ship, leaving her stranded. At first she had hoped for kindness, for help. But kindness did not exist here. The aliens were proud and cruel, and they saw weakness as an opportunity to laugh and dominate. Leora moved carefully through the streets, trying not to attract attention. Her stomach growled, a loud reminder of her constant hunger. She ducked behind a stack of metal crates and picked through the discarded scraps of food. A moldy fruit, a few dried grains. Barely enough, but it would have to do. She ate quickly, swallowing the hard, dry pieces, knowing the aliens would mock her if they saw how hungry she truly was. "You really think that will fill you?" the blue-scaled boy said suddenly, stepping out from the shadows. He smirked, showing sharp white teeth. "Even a baby of my kind could eat more than that." Leora flinched but kept her voice steady. "It is enough for now," she said softly. She refused to give him the satisfaction of seeing her cry. The boy laughed and shook his head. "You humans are so fragile. I cannot understand how your kind survives anywhere." He waved his clawed hands, and the group around him laughed in agreement. Leora swallowed another piece of fruit, her hands trembling. She wished she could disappear, wished she could find a place where no one mocked her. But she could not. This was her world now, a world that demanded she hide and endure. Despite the cruelty, she did not give up. She moved with careful steps toward the outskirts of the settlement, where the scavenging was safer. She had learned where the scraps were best hidden, where she could find enough to keep her alive for another day. Survival was all she knew, but she also carried hope, a quiet, fragile hope that someone, somewhere, would see her not as weak, but as a person. Hours passed. Leora worked tirelessly, collecting tiny bits of food, mending torn clothes, and finding shelter in narrow alleys where the aliens rarely ventured. The heat of the suns made her skin burn, but she ignored it. Hunger was worse than heat. Hunger made every step painful, every breath heavy. Yet she survived. She always survived. Late in the afternoon, she returned to her small hiding place beneath a pile of broken metal sheets. She arranged the scraps she had gathered, creating a tiny meal. It was meager, but it was hers. She sat cross-legged, eating slowly, savoring every small bite. In these moments, she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond hunger and cruelty, a life where laughter was shared for joy, not mockery. As she ate, she heard footsteps approaching. She froze, her heart racing. The aliens did not usually come this far, not alone. Slowly, she peeked out and saw a figure she had never seen before. He was human. His clothes were different from hers, clean and well-made. His hair was dark and his eyes were kind, not cruel like the others. The human knelt a few steps away, looking around before speaking. "Hello?" he said softly. "I mean you no harm." Leora wanted to run, to hide, but something in his voice stopped her. There was no mockery, no laughter, just calm, quiet words. She tilted her head, studying him carefully. Who, who are you? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. My name is Kyle, he said, smiling gently. I've been watching you. You are strong, even though they do not see it. The words felt strange in her ears. Strong? She had spent her whole life hiding, scavenging, starving, and enduring cruelty. Could she really be strong? Kale continued. I will not laugh at you. I will not harm you. I want to help. Leora blinked, unsure if she could trust him. She had learned that trust could be dangerous, that kindness often came with a price. But something about him felt different. Something about him gave her a small flicker of hope she had almost forgotten. I don't know if I can believe you, she said finally, her voice trembling. You don't have to yet, Kale said calmly. Just know that you are not alone. Not anymore. Leora felt a warmth in her chest, a feeling she had not felt in a long time. She wanted to hope. She wanted to believe that someone could care for her, that someone could see her as more than weak and fragile. For the first time in many months, she ate her tiny meal without fear of ridicule. The stars above began to glow as the sun set, and the night was cooler, less oppressive. Leora curled up beneath the metal sheets, her stomach still empty, but her heart slightly fuller. Somewhere deep inside, a small seed of trust had been planted. And though she did not yet know it, her life was about to change forever. The morning suns rose over the alien settlement, painting the jagged rocks and metal structures in gold and orange. Leora opened her eyes slowly, muscles stiff and stomach aching. Last night had been different. She had slept without fear, if only for a few hours, because of Kale. Even though she had only met him briefly, the memory of his kind voice stayed with her, a soft warmth against the cold cruelty around her. She rose carefully, adjusting the small bundle of scraps she had saved. Hunger still gnawed at her, but today felt lighter. Maybe hope could live even in a world that had been so cruel. Leora moved through the streets, keeping low, scanning for discarded scraps as she always did. The aliens were already out, laughing and shouting as they showed off their strength. Some pushed each other into walls. Others flexed their claws and tails, demonstrating speed and skill. Leora's heart sank each time she saw them. But she reminded herself she would survive. She always survived. While she scavenged near a pile of broken metal panels, she felt it, a small bundle of dried fruits and grains, neatly arranged, with a small note on top. Leora froze. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Written carefully on a scrap of paper were the words, "For you. Eat. You are stronger than they believe. Kyle." Her eyes widened. Someone had helped her, without asking for anything in return. Her mind raced, trying to understand why. Why would a stranger care? But the thought that someone saw her strength, even when the aliens did not, made her chest swell with a strange warmth. She ate quickly, savoring each piece. The food filled her, not just physically but emotionally. Each bite reminded her that perhaps not all beings were cruel. Perhaps kindness could exist even in this harsh world. Later that day, as Leora moved quietly through an abandoned warehouse, she heard the sounds of alien children playing. They noticed her immediately. "Look, it's the human again." One yelled, "Did someone feed you already, weakling?" They laughed, but Leora held her head high. She ignored them, moving with careful steps, clutching her newly found bundle. Inside, she whispered to herself, "I will not let them break me." Despite the fear that still clung to her, she began to notice small things. A shadow that moved, just right, a flicker of movement near her hiding spots. Kale. He had been watching, ensuring that she was safe while not exposing himself to the aliens. The knowledge made her feel less alone, even if she had yet to meet him again. Over the next few days, Kale continued his quiet acts. Small bundles of food, a water pouch, a warm blanket when the nights grew cold. Leora began to look forward to discovering his gifts. They were never left in the same spot twice. so she had to pay close attention, learning to observe the patterns of the settlement carefully. Through these small acts, Leora began to change. Her steps grew more confident. She stretched her thin muscles whenever she could, feeling strength slowly return. She began speaking quietly to herself, practicing words she had almost forgotten, imagining conversations, dreams, and plans. For the first time in months, she laughed softly at small private jokes. One afternoon, Kale appeared in the shadows, watching her carefully. Leora noticed him immediately, her eyes widening. It's you, she whispered. Her voice trembled. Kale stepped forward slowly, raising his hands. Yes, it is me, he said gently. I wanted to see if you were safe. Leora hesitated. She wanted to run, to hide like she always did, but something about Kale was different. There was no malice, no mockery. He stood quietly, observing, waiting. Why? Why are you helping me? She asked softly. Kale smiled, a kind, patient smile. Because I can, and because I believe that everyone deserves care no matter what others say. You are strong, Leora. I see it, even if the others cannot. Leora's heart raced. The words went familiar, strong. She had always thought of her cell. Days passed, and the alien settlement carried on with its usual chaos. The tall, sharp-eyed creatures flaunted their strength, mocked the weak, and celebrated cruelty as if it were a game. Leora moved through the settlement with greater confidence now. Her body, though still thin, felt stronger from the small, steady meals Kale left for her. Her mind, once clouded with fear, was becoming sharper. She was learning the rhythms of the place, the safest paths to scavenge, the hidden spots where she could rest, yet the fear never fully left. The aliens could still corner her at any moment, their laughter echoing in her ears. And so, she remained cautious, her eyes always alert, her ears tuned to every sound. It was during one of these cautious explorations that she noticed something unusual. Near a pile of broken crates, a bundle of food had been left for her. But this time it was different. Alongside the dried fruits and clean water was a small, neatly folded blanket and a note. You are stronger than you know. Use this. Kale, Leora's hands trembled as she unfolded the blanket. It was soft, warm, and entirely unlike anything she had ever owned. Her throat tightened. Someone cared for her. Someone believed in her. Slowly she began to eat the food, savoring each bite, her mind swirling with thoughts of Kale. The next morning she moved carefully toward the outskirts of the settlement. Kale's gifts had given her strength, but she knew she could not rely on them forever. She needed to be smarter, quicker, and more observant. The alien's cruelty was relentless. Young children would trip her or steal her scraps. Adults would push her roughly or shout insults. Every day was a test of patience and cleverness. She had begun to notice patterns in their behavior. Certain paths were safer at specific times. Some areas were rarely watched, and the aliens often grew careless when celebrating their power. With this knowledge, Leora could move more freely, though still cautiously. One evening, as the twin moons rose and the settlement grew quieter, Kyle appeared in the shadows. Leora froze at first, unsure if it was truly him. But when he stepped closer, she recognized the warmth in his eyes. I've watched you, he said softly. You've become clever, strong, and careful. You are learning faster than I expected. Leora lowered her gaze, embarrassed by the praise. I have to survive, she whispered. They will not stop. Kale nodded. I know. That is why I help. You deserve safety, food, warmth. You are not just surviving. You are growing. For several minutes they remained in silence. Leora noticed how careful Kale was, never drawing attention from the aliens. He moved quietly, yet always with purpose. She realized that he was more than just kind. He was intelligent and thoughtful, someone who could protect and guide without harming others. In the following days, Kale's acts became more daring. He left larger bundles of food, tools for gathering, water, and even small items to help Leora mend her worn clothes. Leora's health improved noticeably. Her cheeks regained color, her movements became less shaky, and her small hands grew stronger. She began to believe that she could survive and even thrive, despite the aliens' relentless mockery. But Leora also knew that secrecy was crucial. If the aliens discovered Kale's involvement, the consequences could be severe. She learned to move swiftly to find the hidden gifts, memorizing the patterns of the settlement and hiding anything that could expose her. One afternoon, she discovered a small mirror Kyle had left along with a note. "See yourself as I see you, strong, capable, and resilient." Leora stared at her reflection. For the first time, she did not see only weakness. She saw determination, intelligence, and courage. Slowly, she began to straighten her back, lift her chin, and meet her reflection's eyes with quiet confidence. The next night, she discovered another gift, a small, handmade journal. The pages were blank, except for a note on the first page. "Write your thoughts. Keep your dreams alive. Kyle." Leora held the journal close, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She opened it carefully and began to write. She wrote about the aliens, about her hunger, her fears, and her secret hope. She wrote about Kale's kindness and how it made her feel stronger. She realized that writing her thoughts helped her see herself more clearly as someone who was more than weak or fragile. Days turned into weeks. Leora continued to survive the daily cruelty of the settlement, but now she did so with strategy, confidence, and hope. She had begun to understand that her life did not have to be defined by the aliens' laughter. She could carve a small space of safety, a space where she could grow. Kyle's presence, even unseen, became a constant comfort. Leora began to anticipate his help without expecting it, learning to trust without fear. Each bundle, each note, each small act of kindness was a reminder that she was not alone. Someone saw her as more than a weak human. They saw her potential, her courage, her heart. One evening, as the sun set behind jagged cliffs, Leora sat quietly in her small shelter, writing in her journal. She paused to listen to the alien settlement around her. The laughter and shouting continued, but it no longer filled her with dread. She felt a quiet strength, a sense that she could survive whatever they threw at her. She looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky and whispered to herself, "I am stronger than they believe, and I will not give up." Somewhere, in the shadows, Kale watched her carefully. He did not intervene that night, choosing instead to observe. He saw the change in her, her growing confidence, her ability to endure, her courage. A smile crossed his face. Humans had a resilience that was rare, a combination of heart and mind that could withstand cruelty and still grow stronger. For the first time in her life, Leora felt a flicker of certainty. She could survive, she could grow, and one day, she might even find safety, respect, and happiness. And that flicker, fragile but persistent, was enough to keep her going. The settlement was unusually quiet that morning. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long shadows over the jagged metal and rocky streets. Leora moved carefully, her steps light but deliberate. She had grown stronger, quicker, and more confident in recent weeks. Every day, Kale's secret acts of kindness had given her courage and strength. But today there was a tension in the air that made her skin prickle. Something was different. As she approached a narrow alley to collect discarded food, she noticed movement at the far end. Her heart tightened. The blue-scaled boy who had mocked her countless times was standing with a group of others, their eyes sharp and cruel. They had noticed her. She froze, unsure if she should run or hide. Then a familiar voice spoke softly from the shadows. "Stay calm. Don't show fear." Leora's breath caught. Kyle stepped out from the cover of crates. He was taller than most humans, his presence calm and confident. For the first time, she saw him fully, not just as a shadow or a helper. He was real, and he was here to protect her. Kale moved quickly, placing himself between Leora and the aliens. "You will not harm her. he said firmly, his voice carrying authority she had never heard in this place. The aliens laughed at him, at the audacity of a human speaking with such confidence. "And who will stop us?" the blue-scaled boy sneered. "You? A weak human?" Kale's eyes did not waver. "Yes, me." The aliens exchanged confused looks. They had never encountered a human who did not tremble before them, who did not bow to their strength or fear their claws. Leora felt a surge of hope and courage. Kale's presence was different. It was not about brute force, but about calm intelligence and the courage to stand for what is right. The aliens advanced, trying to surround them, but Kale had already assessed the situation. He moved with precise steps, guiding Leora behind a pile of debris. "Follow me exactly. Do not panic." Leora's heart raced, but she did as he instructed. Together they navigated the narrow streets, ducking behind walls, sliding under scaffolding, and slipping past unsuspecting aliens. Kyle's knowledge of the settlement was impressive. He had studied the layout carefully and knew exactly how to move without alerting too many enemies. At one point, the blue-scaled boy lunged forward, trying to grab Leora's arm. Kale moved faster, stepping in and blocking the attack with a simple shove. The boy stumbled, surprised by the human's speed and precision. Leora's eyes widened. She had never seen anyone move like this before, not even the strongest aliens. Finally, they reached a small hidden courtyard at the edge of the settlement. It was quiet, shaded by metal panels and rocky outcrops. Kyle turned to her, breathing steadily. "You are safe here for now," he said gently. Leora sank to the ground, exhaustion catching up with her. Her hands trembled as she held the bundle of food Kale had brought, her body still weak from weeks of hunger. But for the first time she felt a sense of safety. Someone was truly protecting her. Kale knelt beside her. "You have grown stronger than I imagined. You are clever, careful, and brave. But you should not face them alone. Not anymore." Tears welled in Leora's eyes. She had survived alone for so long, enduring mockery, hunger, and fear. She had almost forgotten what it meant to be safe, to be cared for. Now, with Kale by her side, she felt a spark of hope that had been missing for months. They stayed in the courtyard, resting and planning. Kale spoke softly about ways to avoid the aliens, about paths that were safer, about times when the settlement's guards were less attentive. Leora listened carefully, absorbing every word. She realized that Kale's help was not just about food or protection. Days turned into weeks, and the alien settlement seemed to shift around Leora. The laughter and mockery that had once filled every corner still echoed, but Leora moved through the streets with confidence. She was no longer the frightened, starving human who had scavenged for scraps. With Kale's guidance and care, she had grown stronger, faster, and wiser. Her body was nourished, her mind sharper, and her heart lighter. Kyle remained by her side, but he allowed her space to learn and adapt. He had taught her strategies for avoiding trouble, methods to gather food safely, and ways to outsmart the aliens without confrontation. Each day, Leora became more independent, more capable, and more resilient. The aliens, who had once mocked her endlessly, began to notice the change. The blue-scaled boy, who had been her cruelest tormentor, hesitated. When he saw her, he no longer laughed with the same confidence, unsure of how to treat a human who no longer appeared weak. One morning, Kyle approached Leora with a small bundle of clothes. "These are for you," he said, his voice gentle. "Clean, comfortable, and strong. You deserve them." Leora's eyes widened as she took the garments. They were soft, well-made, and unlike anything she had ever owned. She felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she felt cared for, not just for survival, but as a person. As she dressed in the new clothes, Leora realized how far she had come. The human inside her had survived unimaginable hardship, yet she had grown stronger, braver, and more confident. She looked in a small puddle of water, seeing her reflection for the first time with pride rather than fear. She saw a young woman, capable of facing the world, someone who could endure cruelty and rise above it. Over the following days, Kyle continued to support her in small but meaningful ways. He helped her gather larger portions of food, find cleaner water, and navigate the settlement's dangerous areas. But he also encouraged her to explore, to learn, and to think for herself. He wanted her strength to be hers, not something borrowed from him. One afternoon, while Leora was exploring a hidden area near the settlement's edge, she discovered a small garden of alien plants that had grown wild. She had learned enough from Kale to understand which plants were safe to eat. Carefully, she harvested some leaves and fruits, amazed at how much she could do on her own. For the first time, she felt truly self-sufficient. Kale watched from a distance, smiling quietly. Leora's growth was remarkable. Humans had a resilience unlike any other species he had encountered. They could endure, adapt, and rise above adversity with a combination of intelligence, courage, and heart. Leora embodied all of that, and Kale felt a deep admiration for her. That evening, Kale took Leora to a small, hidden corner of the settlement. It was a quiet place, shielded from the eyes of the aliens. He had arranged a simple meal, a feast compared to the scraps she had once scavenged. Leora's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the food. "You don't need to thank me," Kyle said softly. "This is just the beginning. You deserve to live well, to be safe, and to be happy." Leora sat down, savoring the meal with care. She realized that life could be more than survival. She could enjoy food, warmth, and kindness. She could live, not just exist. In the following weeks, Leora's confidence grew even further. She began to speak to the aliens with a quiet authority, not arrogance, but calm strength. When small groups tried to intimidate her, she navigated the situations with intelligence and composure. She no longer flinched, no longer trembled. The aliens' laughter no longer held the same power over her. Kyle watched all of this with pride. He had never seen a human grow so quickly in courage and skill. Leora was no longer a fragile girl. She was a symbol of human strength and resilience. And the aliens, whether they realized it or not, were witnessing something remarkable. A human who could endure cruelty, adapt, and rise above it. One evening, Kale proposed something extraordinary. "Leora," he said, "you have survived everything this place could throw at you. You have grown stronger than most aliens I have seen. I want you to be part of something bigger, with me." Leora's eyes widened in surprise. "With you?" she asked, uncertain. "Yes," Kale said, smiling. "I want you to live with me, to be safe, cared for, and respected. I want to marry you." Leora felt a rush of emotions she could not name: shock, joy, disbelief, but most of all, hope. Hope that her life could change completely. Hope that she could leave behind the fear and starvation that had defined her existence. I don't know what to say," Leora whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "I never thought I could." "You don't need to say anything yet," Kale said gently. "Just know that you deserve care, love, and safety, and I will give that to you." Over the next few days, the preparations began. Quietly, Kyle wanted to ensure their new life together would be safe from the settlement's scrutiny. Leora helped him plan, choosing simple but meaningful ways to celebrate their bond. She felt a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. When the day came, the ceremony was quiet, intimate, and filled with warmth. Kale spoke softly, promising to care for her, protect her, and honor her strength. Leora responded with a heart full of gratitude and hope, promising to trust him and embrace the life he offered. As they stood together, surrounded by the soft light of the twin suns, Leora felt a profound sense of transformation. She had gone from a starving, ridiculed human to a cherished, respected individual. She had survived cruelty, endured hardship, and discovered the strength within herself. And now she had someone to share her life with, a protector, a companion, and a partner who believed in her. That night, as the twin moons rose over the settlement, Leora lay beside Kale, feeling the warmth of food, safety, and love. For the first time, she knew she could thrive. She could grow, dream, and live fully. The cruelty of the aliens no longer defined her. Her strength, intelligence, and heart had given her a new life. And as Kale watched over her, he knew that humans' resilience and compassion were extraordinary. Leora's story was proof that even in the harshest worlds, kindness, courage, and heart could create miracles. She had been mocked, starved, and ignored. But now she was cared for, nourished, and cherished. She had survived, and in doing so she had proven the power of human strength and compassion. The twin suns rose over the settlement, but the world felt different now. Leora walked confidently through the streets, her steps steady and proud. The same aliens who had once mocked her, pushed her, and laughed at her weakness now looked at her with surprise and, in some cases, respect. She was no longer the fragile human who scavenged for scraps. She had grown into a strong, clever, and compassionate young woman. Beside her walked Kyle, her husband, protector, and friend. Together, they moved quietly through the settlement, gathering food, water, and supplies. But unlike before, their purpose was not just survival, it was guidance. Leora now helped others who were weak, hungry, or scared. She shared her knowledge of safe paths, hidden food sources, and strategies to navigate the cruel aliens. Her heart, once filled with fear, now overflowed with compassion. One afternoon, she noticed a small group of young aliens teasing another human who had recently arrived. Leora felt her stomach tighten, remembering the fear and hunger she had endured. Without hesitation, she approached the group calmly, her voice firm but gentle. "Leave them alone," she said. The aliens hesitated. They had never seen a human speak with such authority, and more importantly, with no fear. Leora stepped closer, her eyes steady. "You may think cruelty is power, but kindness and intelligence are far stronger. If you wish to survive, learn to respect others, not mock them." The group looked at one another, uncertain. Slowly, they backed away. Leora turned to the frightened human and offered a warm smile. "You are safe now," she said softly. "I will help you just as someone once helped me." Kyle watched silently, pride swelling in his chest. Leora had transformed completely. She had taken the suffering, the fear, and the cruelty of her past and turned it into strength and guidance. She was not only surviving, she was shaping the settlement in her image, creating a small space of compassion in a harsh world. Over the following months, Leora and Kale worked together to bring subtle change to the settlement. They left small gifts of food for those in need, created hidden shelters for the weak, and quietly taught strategies to avoid danger. Their actions were never loud or boastful, yet the ripple of their kindness spread. Slowly, more aliens began to question their ways, noticing that strength did not always require cruelty. Leora also focused on her own growth. She exercised, learned more about alien technology, and kept a journal where she wrote her thoughts, dreams, and observations. She wrote about her journey from hunger and ridicule to safety and respect, and she wrote about the power of kindness and courage. Through these words, she preserved her story, not just for herself but for anyone who might follow her path in the future. Kyle often joined her in the journal sessions, offering guidance and encouragement. "You are extraordinary, Leora," he said one evening as they wrote together beneath the soft glow of the moons. "Humans have a unique strength, heart, mind, and courage combined. You are living proof of that." Leora smiled, feeling warmth spread through her chest. "I never thought I could survive this world," she admitted. "But now I see that humans can endure, adapt, and rise above cruelty. And it is novival. I